to say something about South African democracy at 30 years, and then decided that no, we couldn't. If we did all of those individual interviews, it would take us 6 weeks. That rather let me do one interview, one response, and then perhaps afterwards we can then answer the many questions that people might have. But I honestly didn't know Jane Mfamadi, our host, that there would be so many people here today. But welcome to everybody. And I must also say, Jane, thanks a lot for deciding to host us, because I think this must be an introduction to quite a few of us who are present at Freedom Park. I'm sure it's an introduction to many of us who are here, because I think we have something that we have not done right. It's really because I think this is one of the major products of the last 30 years, this Freedom Park. But I don't think enough of our people know about it, what it means, what it contains, and what it projects that Jane Mfamadi was indicating when she spoke earlier. So I'm really very, very glad that we are here, and I hope all of us, as we live here, will be propagandists for Freedom Park, to ask people to come and then see for themselves. But this year I celebrate 68 years of membership of the ANC. Having joined the ANC Youth League at 13 and a half years in 1956. You can therefore imagine what a difference it would make to me and others of my generation if the South Africa of today looked like the South Africa for which many sacrificed in many ways, including by losing their lives. That generation of mine includes my friend here, my colleague and my very good friend, Mavuso Msimang. The ANC held a victory party at the Carlton Hotel in Johannesburg as soon as the results of our very first democratic elections in 1994 were announced. I happened to serve as the master of ceremonies that joyful evening. Our esteemed guests that evening included Mrs. Coretta Scott King, the wife of the late esteemed leader, the Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr. Almost spontaneously, I repeated the words her husband and comrade cited as they ended his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, "Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last." I'm certain that those words of thanks to the Almighty were uttered by millions throughout our country, because indeed, these millions were free at last from 350 years of cruel, white minority colonial and apartheid rule. And that freedom meant that at last, as visualized in the Freedom Charter, we would have a government based on the will of all the people. And this government would lead the protracted but historic process of bringing about the many changes, such that in time, our diverse but united nation would proclaim together, again basing themselves on the words of the Freedom Charter, that South Africa truly belongs to all who live in it, black and white. And all of us will recall that the 1994 election manifesto of the ANC was based on the Reconstruction and Development Program, the RDP. After the elections, the RDP was slightly recast and presented to Parliament by the Government of National Unity as a white paper. And among others, that white paper said, and I quote, "At the heart of the Government of National Unity is a commitment effectively to address the problems of poverty and the gross inequality evident in almost all aspects of South African society. And this can only be possible if the South African economy can be firmly placed on the path of high and sustainable growth." And of great interest, the conclusion of the white paper is headed "A National Consensus." And it says, and I quote, "The responsibility for the renewal and transformation of our nation is, however, not the responsibility only of the government nor of particular elected officials. It is a joint responsibility of all sections of our nation and calls on all to put their energy."
All right, let's come out of that event. Of course, that is former President Thabo Mbeki addressing a 30 years of democracy event in Freedom Park. He also says he's celebrating this year 68 years as a member of the ANC after joining the party in 1956.